get through as much as we get through in an evening. I don't like to go past 10:30. I think poor decisions are made after 10:30. So I would ask staff to be conscious of that so that we don't start something at 10:25 that's a 45-minute discussion. In addition, much like we've done, I think, every year I've been up here, and I talked to staff a little bit about this beforehand, but we will create a circle back list. So if there's something in the budget that either you don't have a satisfactory answer on, or possibly you're going to want to make a change to a line item, when it gets to a certain point, we ask staff that we're going to be looking at that a little closer down the road. In addition, it also gives staff an opportunity to gather additional information if there's additional information that the council wants to see before moving forward with that particular line items. Last comment I will make as it relates to review of the budget. It's always a productive conversation that we have. It lasts anywhere from 3 to 6 meetings. But what I would ask council to do is, if you see something coming up under our budget topics, and you do have a greater than normal interest, let's put it that way, it's always helpful if you submit your comments or questions to staff beforehand. That allows them to prepare a little better for maybe specific questions that they don't necessarily have at their right at the tip of their tongue, and it allows you to get a better answer and potentially not add something to the circle back list. So that's my expectation for this committee of the whole and the next several that we'll be having. And without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to staff, Mr. Grabowski, and kick off the 2016 budget conversation.
Thank you, Mayor Morley. Thank you, City Council. This evening, we are pleased to submit for review the fiscal year 2016 budget. I'd like to thank Finance Director Gaston, Assistant Finance Director Tom Trezine, and of course each of the department directors and their staffs for their input to assemble this document. Working together, we feel this addresses the needs of the community to move forward and progress. During the 2014-15 timeframe, the City Council and staff participated in a strategic planning process which incorporated ideas and thoughts from various Elmhurst stakeholder groups. The resulting top 3 issues which were made priorities include stormwater, both projects and policies, economic development, and sustaining the city's financial position. Additionally,
You can't hear through the mic.
I have a microphone in front of me.
Bring it a little closer.
Additionally, the goals of strengthening our communications to the community, removing barriers to the zoning process, and continuing technology upgrades in all departments were developed. This is the first budget where these priorities will be formally addressed. Changes in the fiscal year 2016 budget address, the changes in the fiscal year 2016 budget address these strategic priorities from our planning session and focus on providing high-quality service delivery in the most cost-effective manner. In FY 2016, the total number of full-time employees is budgeted to increase by 1 for the addition of an economic development coordinator position, the adjustment from part-time to full-time for the Public Works Administrative Assistant position, and the replacement of 2 part-time Public Works Inspector positions with 1 full-time positions. These are offset by the reduction of a full-time position in the Finance Department to a part-time position, and by the reduction of a full-time position in the Finance Department to a contract position. The addition of the Economic Development Coordinator position is necessary to be the point of contact in addressing the growing economic development opportunities for the city, and Assistant City Manager Kopp will talk in more detail about that during the economic development portion. Currently, the Public Works Administrative Assistant works with the Public Works Director and the City Engineer to coordinate limited project details and communication with residents. Additional responsibilities for the Public Works Administrative Assistant position will include maintaining the new stormwater website and coordinating and tracking residential stormwater programs. Director Killian will talk more about this during his comments. We continue to review each position as it opens up in an effort to reduce future costs of pensions and other benefits that are associated with full-time employees. To move on to the numbers portion, proposed revenues for the City of Elmhurst for fiscal year 2016 total $136,549,312. As indicated in the chart on page 8 of the budget, the largest revenue source is sales, property, and utility taxes, comprising $47.5 million, roughly, or 35% of total revenues. Service charges of $28.4 million, or 21% of total revenues, include $22,795,000 for water and sewer service charges. Moving to the general fund, which is the major operating fund of the city, the proposed budget expenditures are $61,386,867 for the fiscal year. Proposed revenues to the general fund are $58,994,685. This requires the use of fund balance of $2,392,182, which will leave us with a projected general fund balance at the end of fiscal year 2016 of $18.7 million. It should be noted that $1 million of this is transferred for stormwater purposes, specifically for the voluntary home buyout program, and another $1 million is for general obligation debt being abated from the property tax bills and will need to be paid out of the general fund revenues or transfers. The remaining balance, the $18.7 million, complies with the city's fund balance goal policy of 25 to 33% of operating expenditures. However, I would state that these numbers are proposed currently before the Finance Committee, and once they conclude their conversation on the tax levy, they're subject to change based on their recommendation in City Council's final decision. Regarding sales tax, which is a 1% tax for the municipality, it's projected to increase at the rate of 3.75% compared to the prior year. Sales tax still remains the greatest single source of revenue in the city's general fund, excluding the police and fire pension levies. The city continues to take significant action to stabilize other sources of revenue to the general fund and decrease its reliance on automotive-related sales tax, for example, by creating the Economic Development Coordinator position. And we've been able to balance our reliance through economic development efforts to recruit other major sales tax generators such as Mariano's and Whole Foods. And again, all this must be taken into consideration as the Finance Committee and City Council consider future levies and fund balance levels. A few details about the other revenues that are in here. For fiscal year 2016, the 1% prepared food and beverage tax is projected to increase at a rate of 1% for a proposed budget of $1.2 million. Regarding property taxes, this may have changed as of tonight's Finance Committee, but in the budget we have a levy that contained a 1% increase to the general fund portion of the tax levy, a $500,000 decrease in the debt service portion of the tax levy, which was consistent with the City Council's plan to reduce reliance on property tax to pay debt service, and a significant increase in the fire and police pension portion of the levy, primarily due to changing to a more current mortality table. Again, these are all in the document and subject to the recommendation of the Finance Committee and City Council approval. Regarding state income tax, we project that income tax revenue reflects an increase of 3% over fiscal year 2015. Of course, not knowing what the state of Illinois will do, we have proceeded as in the past to include this in the city budget. Regarding local motor fuel tax, the proposed budget local MFT revenue is $312,000 and reflects an 8% increase compared to prior year, primarily due to anticipated volume increase from a new gas station facility. These funds are designated for stormwater system improvements. On utility taxes, Elmhurst allocates the telecommunications tax revenue of 75% to the general fund and 25% to the capital improvement fund. Telecommunications tax revenue continues to struggle, however, due to the expanded use of internet for telephone services and the reduction of landlines to homes. We expect this to remain flat for 2016. For the electricity tax, a 1% increase in revenue is projected for the next fiscal year. And regarding gas use tax, revenue is projected to increase 3% for the next fiscal year. Moving on to the rubbish collection revenue, the projected revenues for 2016 reflect the terms and pricing of the contract that we have. And next, on licenses and permits, the permit fee budgeted for 2016 is projected at just over $1.8 million and contemplates 125 new homes and several commercial projects. Excuse me. Vehicle license fees are a significant source of revenue at $1.3 million annually, and all proceeds from vehicle license sales are designated for street improvements. Just a couple other significant revenue sources. Water rates continue to be impacted by significant water rate increases from the DuPage Water Commission and the City of Chicago. The next fiscal year budget reflects a 5% rate increase from the Water Commission, and the fiscal year 17 budget reflects a 10% rate increase from the Water Commission. Sewage rates will be impacted by significant infrastructure replacement and upgrades in the collection system and at the wastewater treatment plant. And these are due to the age of the infrastructure, EPA mandates, and flood mitigation. Regarding parking system, increases in daily and permit fees were approved in 2008 and 2010. No fee increases are projected at this time, and the Addison parking deck is anticipated to be completed soon, hopefully in fiscal year 2015. Regarding the TIF districts, and TIF 1, which is a central business district, property tax collected for the express purpose of financing the public side responsibilities of this are decreased slightly in 2015 due to decreased EAV. Property tax revenue is projected to increase slightly in 2016 due to projected increase in the equalized assessed value combined with an anticipated tax rate decrease compared to prior year. TIF 2, the tax revenues accruing to this fund are anticipated to be flat due to no new growth anticipated. TIF 3, we anticipate also to be flat due to projected increase in the equalized assessed value combined with an anticipated tax rate decrease compared to prior year. And then finally in TIF 4, due to the timing of development within the TIF, a small property tax increment was received in 2015. Due to the projected small increase in EAV, the tax increment is projected to be flat for the next fiscal year of 2016. Overall, the EAV in Elmhurst is projected to increase for 2015, which was somewhat expected due to the economy and timing of property assessments. Looking at the real estate market, it appears that home prices continue to climb and turn over in a timely fashion. Following the results of the 2015 strategic plan, this budget emphasizes stormwater relief through a number of projects and policies, economic development to continue Elmhurst's growth, and it sustains the city's strong financial position. We feel that this is a sound fiscal plan for the city of Elmhurst for the next fiscal year, and I would request the council's positive consideration. And again, I'd like to thank Marilyn and Tom, along with the department directors, for their input and cooperation during the process. So tonight, we have, first up, the Elmhurst Library and the Library Board, then the museum, and of course, there's some representatives from the Heritage Foundation with Brian to present that. And then finance got a little bit crazy this year. We went with Public Works first instead of Police and Fire. So you may have noticed that change from years prior. Hope it didn't throw anybody for a loop. So we have some of the Public Works employees in the back, and we hope to get through as many of those as possible, understanding and recognizing the hard stop of 10:30.
Okay, great. Questions, say it again? Questions or comments as it relates to just what we've been presented before we dive into the public library? Mr. York.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jim, on your page number 3 there, under sales taxes, I had circled in my book around the last couple sentences where it says, and/or should the loss of local sales tax associated with the internet sales not be stopped at the federal level? Can you expound on why that was put in there?
That refers to the, every now and then, maybe more often than that, there's talk of taxing internet sales or not, and so that refers to basically what, you know, if they do tax them, how does that affect us, and we're not sure of the outcome on that. Would it affect us negatively? Would we be losing tax revenue versus gaining tax revenue in that sense?
A follow-up. So currently, we don't get any sales taxes from out-of-state internet sales. Is that correct? And I mean, for the most part,
Yeah.
Unless people report it on their use taxes through the state. how does that go? Does that go pro rata, or does that go per capita?
Yes, I believe the use tax is distributed on a per capita basis.
Okay, so right now, we really aren't receiving anything substantially, and we're just saying here that it could change, but
Right.
something
We
less
just
than
need-
zero is still zero, so,
Right.
right? So,
Right.
Okay,
We
I
just
just-
need to keep our eye on it.
okay, all right, thank you.
Alderman Mulliner.
I know this doesn't specifically relate to this, but I do want to bring one thing up that I'd like to make sure we put in to the budget, or I'd like to request that we put into the budget, and I'd like us, and I know it's not at this point, but when we get to the grants, to add $50,000 into the grant area for the American Legion. So I just want to make sure that that's not missed as we move forward, and I'd like to look for revenue as we move through by cuts in different places or moving money from one place to another if we need to. I know this isn't the topic right now, but I'm throwing it out there.
I don't have the full schedule in front of me, City Manager. When will we be getting to community, I'm assuming Alderman Muller is referring to the community grant program where we give to the symphony and other folks like that. Where does that fall under, and about what meeting would you guess?
That's under community development, certainly not tonight, but within the next 2 or 3 meetings.
Okay. All right. Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may just chime in quickly on the issue of the American Legion and support. So after last week's meeting where we did not approve video gambling, which obviously the American Legion was asking for, several aldermen, a few of us aldermen had conversations about what we potentially could do to help the Legion. Certainly Alderman Leader, Alderman Mulliner, Alderman Toledo among them expressed concern. So we have started a process with the American Legion where we're going to sit down with the American Legion as early as this Friday. We just need to firm a couple things up to start a conversation with the Legion in terms of what kind of help and support they're looking for, and more importantly, what kind of help and support we as a city can provide them. Certainly one of those aspects might be financial, to Alderman Mulliner's point, but there are some other areas that we think might be beneficial to the Legion. But I think mainly we just want to get a better understanding of what their situation is and how we can support it. So we're going to start that conversation this week and move it forward. I would suspect in time it will land in front of one of the committees to take action, but wanted the council to know that we will continue the conversation with the American Legion specific to what support we might provide them.
Okay. Alderman Bram.
Two questions on page 5 of, I believe, the memo. The first question is on in the first paragraph, and it's in reference, previously on page 4, license and permits. The statement that I highlighted was most permit fees are updated annually based on CPI. I think that's a good thing. My question is, why most, why not all? And, what are the ones that aren't being updated by CPI? And then therefore, and I'm not expecting, I guess, the answer now unless you have it, but, and why not? Why are those license and permits not being updated by CPI?
We'll bring that list back to the council.
Thank you. And then the second question on that page 5, is the statements made about the parking system. It does reference the Addison deck being online, obviously, hopefully at the end of 2015, if not 2016. But the statement I'm curious about is increases in daily and permit fees were approved by the City Council effective 2008 and 2010. No fee increases are projected at this time. Again, the same basic question, why aren't we increasing the fees annually by CPI or by other means? If you have the answer now or at a later council meeting, that is fine as well.
We'd like to bring that back at the same time as the
Okay.
list of the other.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other general questions or comments about the opening statement before we jump in? Seeing none, City Manager Grabowski, you ready to start with the library?
I am.
Great.
Yes.
Have you
seen the second floor since the remodel? It sounds pretty cool.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to meet with you tonight to review the library budget.
Yeah, the mic is not working well.
Can you tap that, see if it's
Swallow it or something.
It's just, yeah, as good as it's going to get.
I'm going to put glasses on. I am Linda Wheaton, President of the Library Board of Trustees. I'd like to begin by introducing the other trustees who are here this evening. Behind me, Marcia Baker and Sue Sadowski. And the library director, Mary Beth Camp, is also here. 2015 was another landmark year for the Elmhurst Public Library. The Adult Services Department was reconfigured to meet changing needs of the community. We made it through several months of construction that added
Can you
fantastic.
get as close to the microphone as possible?
Okay.
Might be something we have to work on with the next meeting, Mr.
How's that?
Grabowski.
Give her the other microphone.
Ooh, that one might work better.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the portable.
See if that one works a little better.
Special order new phones.
We made it through several months of construction that added fantastic new features to the upstairs space. The library now has new and improved areas that include spotlight collections, a cozy fireplace reading area, an enclosed teen space, a business center, a poster printer, a 3D printer, 9 new study rooms, a gathering room, and 3 creative studios where residents can create high-quality audio, video, and graphic content. I'm very pleased to say that it took no time at all for Elmhurst residents to adapt to this new environment and embrace all that the renovated space has to offer. Since the new study rooms have opened, usage has increased dramatically. It is not unusual to have every room in use. The 3D printer and the poster printer are much in demand, and the creative studios average about 100 uses per month. Of course, everyone enjoys the fireplace, and now that the weather is becoming colder, this cozy, quiet space surrounding the fireplace is more inviting than ever. This past year also saw an uptick in programming, and thus community attendance at the library. Visitor counts are up 6% for the year, and that's an increase of 2,500 visits per month. The library is offering more and better programming in response to the community's needs to connect and create right here in its own backyard. If you haven't taken the time to read our fine print newsletter, I suggest that you take a look. We have programs for every age, and we cater to many different interests. We now have interesting clubs such as In Stitch's Needlework, Dish Club for Cooks, Paper Crafts Club, Mindfulness Club, as well as the Wine Club and the Beer Club, as well as several others. We also show movies in the large meeting room and serve popcorn. We have business-related programs geared specifically to the burgeoning small business community. We provide many technology-related classes. If you're interested in learning about your new iPad, researching your family history online, or discovering the ins and outs of using the cloud for storage, the library is the place to be. The board just updated the library's strategic plan for the next 5 years. The library's new mission states that the Elmhurst Public Library enriches lives in Elmhurst by providing opportunities to connect, create, and explore. We've identified 4 areas to focus on to meet our mission. Those areas are programming, collections, spaces, and marketing. With this plan, we will begin exploring and implementing service initiatives that will further enhance life in Elmhurst for all residents. The initiatives include such goals as creating a makerspace, expanding digital collections, and creating an overall marketing plan to let everyone in Elmhurst know about everything we have. To read the complete plan, please see the winter edition of the fine print. We're excited to begin implementing our plan and developing more innovative ideas that encourage our residents to continue to see the library as essential to the quality of life in Elmhurst. I am so pleased to announce that once again, the Elmhurst Public Library has received a 4-star rating from Library Journal magazine. This designation is only given to the top libraries in the nation. It is based on usage statistics and patron involvement. Elmhurst residents use the library at a rate that ranks among the highest in the nation per capita. This is something that we can all be proud of. According to a survey done in 2014 by the Pew Research Center, the more people are engaged with the public library, the more they tend to feel connected to their community as a whole. Library users are also more likely to call their communities good or excellent places to live. Elmhurst residents have a strong sense of ownership regarding their library. Before you tonight, you have our budget, which includes not only our operating expenses, but also the funds needed for repayment of our building bonds. The library has levied conservatively for the past few years. We continue that trend this year with a 1.5% increase. Thank you for helping us make the library such a successful resource for the community. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank the mayor and the city council, as well as the city manager and the rest of the city staff who help us on a daily basis. Thank you.
Is that it? Oh, I thought Mary Beth was-
Questions, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Any questions for the library? Alderman Leader.
I just want to say that the library is the jewel in the crown for Elmhurst. That it is, in my honest opinion, pound for pound, probably as good, if not better, than any library in the country. It's an exciting place to go. It was a great library a year ago or 2 or 3, but now it's just remarkable what you have accomplished over there. So I want to just congratulate you on not only your success in that library, but your contribution to housing values in Elmhurst.
Thank you.
That was a tough question.
Alderman York.
Thank you. First of all, I echo Alderman Leader on that. I had the good fortune of coming over for the grand opening for the upstairs room, and it was just really cool to see the excitement around that addition. Perhaps, Mary Beth, could you just kind of review, I know you have a number of funds, and I was just wondering if you could kind of, besides the operating fund, we all get that, but the capital replacement fund and the working cash fund, can you just kind of, we can see what the numbers are, but can you kind of give me some idea of what kind of things take place out of those? And do you, for example, do you have a schedule of capital replacements that goes along with that fund, and some details along those lines, please?
Yes, we do have a capital replacement fund, which I think, as you know, is a restricted fund, which means it can only be spent on items for capital replacement, fixing, maintaining the library. So I can't pay salaries out of that or use it for operating the library. We have about $1.2 million in that, 1.25. The library is 13 years old, which I know it's kind of hard to believe. People still think it's new, but it is 13 years old. So within the next, I'd say 5 to 10 years, we may actually start to see some of our major components failing, needing to be replaced, needing to be upgraded. So that fund would be where most of those expenditures would come from. So that's the capital replacement fund. We also have a working cash fund. Working cash has about $1.569 million in it. Most of that will be spent this year with the realization of this project that we just finished up. It doesn't say that in your budget, and I apologize for that. That was my fault because I didn't get that number to Marilyn. This project spanned 2 budget years, so we actually had it built in for last year. We only spent a small portion of it because of how the project came in. We started it last year at the very end of the year and finished it this year. So most of that fund will be spent down. Then we also have a couple of other funds which are also restricted funds. The LEA fund, which I think has about $24,000 in it, that fund was donated to us by someone who passed away in the community. We do not know who it was, and it was designated for the training and training of staff members, so it can only be used for that. We draw on about $3,000 a year for that, so we'll just spend it down yearly over time. The other one is the Gavin Fund, and that has about $63,000 in it. That's another restricted fund, which was a donation from a patron who designated that it be used for resources for visual education. So we've been spending that fund down too, and we basically budget it to use for DVDs. Visual education. That fund is scheduled to be spent down this next year, $63,000, and I think we're going to be done with that fund. And then we also do have operating fund reserves of about $2.9 million. We do need that in the operating fund now because, well, we need a little something in the operating fund, but now we run on the new budget year, which begins in January for us and ends in December, as you know, but we don't get our first tax payment in, which is basically what most of our budget runs on, until July. So we're kind of living, well, we aren't kind of, we are living off of that $2.9 million reserve from January until July when we get our first big tax payment in. Does that answer that, Kevin? Mm-hmm. Okay. And as far as a capital replacement schedule, we do have one in place, and that is something in our strategic plan and our internal initiatives that the board just voted to do, is to have a new capital replacement plan developed. So we want to bring someone in to kind of give us a maintenance schedule on. Actually, parts are maintained, but what we might be looking at within the next 5 years as far as major components that need to be replaced.
Alderman York.
Yeah, as a follow-up, no, that's a perfect explanation. I certainly understand the operating fund because, as you said, you don't get the money in until later on in the year. In your budget, though, you have capital outlay, which is at the bottom of page 199 for people who are following along. And while it's not a significant amount of money, building improvements, they're itemized like $235,000. And I guess, why wouldn't some of those come out of the capital fund versus an operating fund? So, but you guys have your own board. I'm just kind of asking, questions, so.
What those tend to be right now are some special projects that we have. Some of them are coming out of reserve. It just depends on where they fall. This next year is kind of a light year for us. We actually received a large donation too from a patron who passed away this past year of approximately $155,000. And that's budgeted in there to start looking into and possibly even building a makerspace this next budget year. So that's part of that $235,000. So that $155,000 is also in our operating fund reserves.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for the library? Seeing none, I think that wraps it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, now we will ask Brian Berghager to come up from the museum, along with newly inaugurated President Michael Cicero.
Good evening. I am Michael Cicero, newly elected president of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. I am pleased to be here on behalf of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, an independent, not-for-profit 501c3 that exists to support the Elmhurst Historical Museum. As volunteers, we, the members of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, many of which are in attendance today, donate our time and talents to further our mission in support of the Elmhurst Historical Museum. We are the mechanism through which additional donations, gifts, and in-kind contributions can be provided to augment the monies you budget to run the Elmhurst Historical Museum, a department of the city. Make no mistake, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation and Elmhurst Historical Museum are intrinsically linked. What you do for the museum affects us, as what we do affects and benefits the museum and the city. I believe this last year's events have brought about a better understanding of that fact. We on the foundation are pleased to see this year's proposed budget reflect that continued commitment to the museum. The mission of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is to stimulate broad-based support for local history, the Elmhurst Historical Museum, and Churchville Schoolhouse through advocacy, education, and fundraising. We educate by conducting programs and providing services to the public, such as our lectures, and to children through our ongoing one-room schoolhouse program at the Churchville Schoolhouse, Ruth Strand Contest, and other in-class programs. We advocate through the programs we conduct and host, as well as through other informational and educational events. We inform all about the importance of their role in assisting the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation and Elmhurst Historical Museum in preserving the heritage of Elmhurst. We fundraise through our membership program and other development efforts. You will recall that we conducted the successful Visionary Voices campaign that allowed us to raise over $300,000 and fund the construction of the transformational and award-winning, by all accounts, The Story of Elmhurst exhibit. Over our short time as a foundation, we have amassed over $1 million in endowment that we work to continue to grow. In last year's grant to the city by the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, we provided over $142,000 in direct financial support to the museum, consisting of $20,000 for ongoing exhibits, $78,000 for the by all accounts exhibit, $5,500 for programs, and $28,000 for the salary of the community programs coordinator. In addition, we also provided the cost of transporting local school children to visit the museum and schoolhouse in an amount in excess of over $6,000. Why does the board of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, consisting of prominent citizens and former elected officials, donate their time and talents? We recognize that the Elmhurst Historical Museum is a jewel and asset of this community. It is important for all of us to understand the fundamental importance of having such a cultural institution with such local and regional appeal that most other surrounding towns do not have. The museum not only adds to the quality of life for all our residents, but also serves as an often unrecognized economic engine that drives new residents and businesses to Elmhurst. When residents and others visit the museum or attend an event or program, they often patronize a local bar, restaurant, shop, or other business. Patrons to the museum come from all over the region and even from out of state, as we recently experienced at our recent craft beer festival. Accordingly, I urge you to continue or increase your level of financial support of the museum. The museum that we have is an innovative, vibrant, creative institution with broad-based support that continues to display award-winning exhibits. These results only exist because of our joint efforts as partners to properly support it and maintain it. Never overlook the fact that the museum and such other local institutions add to the cultural heritage of a community. These institutions help retain our older residents as well as attract new younger residents, all who thirst for cultural enhancements. They cannot exist without your continued financial support. Our predecessors, maybe your parents or grandparents, deemed it important for Elmhurst to establish and support a history museum to preserve our history and heritage for future generations. It is our continued joint responsibility to accept that charge and carry on for our children and grandchildren. We at the Foundation were pleased to see the physical improvements made to the museum facilities this past year. We commend you as you fulfilled your responsibilities as stewards of this historical property when you installed the new HVAC system at the Gloss Mansion. These improvements now allow for an appropriate environment for proper display of exhibits in a comfortable climate for visitors and better protects the mansion itself from decay. As you provided funding for the remodeling of the first floor gallery, the Foundation provided the additional monies to build out the second floor gallery to effectively display the new, by all accounts, the Story of Elmhurst exhibit. Together, we have and can continue to do great things. We further hope that similar needed improvements can be made to the Education Center so that we can further be able to effectively provide more flexible spaces to better present our programs and events. A better lecture and meeting space in that building would allow us to provide more diverse programming that would benefit the entire community. Let me tell you a few things that we've done since last year's message to you. In February of this year, we hosted a reception for the opening of the new museum exhibit, by all accounts, the Story of Elmhurst. That reception, for many of our members and supporting donors, celebrated the opening of this unique and special exhibit. You will recall that this innovative and now award-winning exhibit was a result of our 2-year fundraising campaign, which saw the Foundation raise an unprecedented amount of $300,000 to cover the costs of this new exhibit. Another example of the Foundation's financial support of the museum. This exhibit conveys the story of Elmhurst through multiple voices and mediums. It incorporates our collection, as well as includes innovative technology. This exhibit remains flexible, allowing for ongoing improvements and changes in the years to come. In September, for the first time ever, we, in partnership with the Elmhurst Rotary Club, hosted a craft beer festival on the museum grounds in conjunction with the opening of our current exhibit, Beer Chicago, The Refreshing History. Due to the efforts of over 62 volunteers from the Heritage Foundation, museum staff, and Rotary, this event attracted over 450 people to the fest, at least 100 of those who visited the exhibit. These key people came from over 28 surrounding communities in such places as Kalamazoo, Michigan, and Washington, D.C. This event brought a young set of patrons to the museum, which helped us raise over $21,000 and expose a whole new group to the greatness of Elmhurst and its businesses. Not only did we partner with Rotary, but also with many other local businesses, including City Center, which donated over 200 discount coupons, which we distributed to attendees, over 40 of which were used that day alone. In further pursuit of our continuing goal to partner with other organizations and Elmhurst businesses in promoting new exhibits and programs, we involved over 25 local sponsors for this event, including Pints, our platinum sponsor, who reported over 60 patrons who came to them after the festival to further eat and drink. This event also saw us establish better working relationships with the city manager, police, fire, and public works departments, who were instrumental and extremely cooperative in helping us put on this extraordinary event. Over the last several years, the foundation members actively participated with the staff of the museum in completing the strategic planning process. Finalized last spring, it has helped provide a directional sense for the museum and indirectly the foundation. We have been in the process of assisting in implementing recommendations with the museum staff, including the creation of a training video for volunteers and better using our programs and events to promote the museum and Elmhurst businesses. We are proud of our regular recurring programs and the wide variety of other special programs we provide that connect to ongoing exhibits. Our ongoing Ruth Strand contest helps involve Elmhurst school children in the history of Elmhurst through our interpretive poster contest. As an incentive for participation, we provide monetary support to the libraries of those schools that do participate. We also honor the contest winners at both the reception and at the Memorial Day Parade. In this small way, we hope to build interest in Elmhurst history in some of our youngest residents. Our most unique ongoing program is the educational program we sponsor and support at the Churchville one-room schoolhouse. This event, where school children from all over the county experience what it was like to attend school in this one-room environment, is authentically and faithfully conducted by our school marm. As a further benefit to our members and donors, we frequently host receptions which can provide a sneak peek or preview of a new exhibit. Stay tuned for more information about an upcoming special event for members and donors in February 2016, still in the planning stages, to celebrate the one-year anniversary of the opening of the By All Accounts, The Story of Elmhurst exhibit. Not only do the museum exhibits and staff receive awards for their creativeness and innovation, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation has recently been named as the recipient of the DuPage County Historical Society Recognition Award. This award was presented to the foundation in recognition of our collective efforts and our contributions in preserving, promoting, and enriching DuPage County history. We at the foundation never rest on our laurels. Some of these next year's goals are as follows. We're implementing a new software program which will help us better manage our relationships with members' donors. We have hired a local Elmhurst accounting firm to assist us in our financial management operation, thereby improving our professionalism and streamlining our work processes. We will better utilize all forms of communication to promote the foundation, museum, and city. We plan to better use the foundation's website to promote our programs and activities and make sure that it always contains up-to-date and relevant information. As a part of the promotion of the Craft Beer Festival, we successfully used social media to promote the event, the museum, and foundation. We also are creating a promotional video for the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation to better inform all of our role in support of the museum. We expect to increase membership and donors. We currently have over 225 members and would like to grow that in the coming year through a reinforcement of previous efforts and some newer approaches. We also hope to expand on an existing program to cultivate legacy and charitable giving. Through our Legacy Circle program, we hope to encourage more people to name us in their estate planning documents. We will more actively assist the museum in pursuing sponsorships for new museum exhibits to both offset the cost of these exhibits, but also stretch our dollars to allow even more innovation in exhibits. We will budget to more actively and regularly build our endowment so that eventually, down the road, we may become less reliant on annual contributions. We plan to conduct our own strategic planning process to help us focus the vision of the foundation on our goals as we support the museum. We are continuing to add improvements and enhancements to the by all accounts, the Story of Elmhurst exhibit by expending an additional sum of $30,000 this year. And finally, we will continue partnering with other community organizations as we are already planning next year's Craft Beer Fest with the Rotary Club of Elmhurst, now set for September 17th, 2016. Please mark your calendars. We hope to see even more of you there this year. Thanks to all the staff of the museum and Director Berghager for their ongoing support. We work as partners to promote the museum and provide outstanding programs and services to the Elmhurst community. A further word about the museum staff. Never have so few done so much with so little with such big success. This success does not occur in a vacuum. Please recognize the leadership provided by Director Berghager in maintaining a creative environment for his talented staff to thrive. Thanks to you, Mayor Morley, Manager Grabowski, and members of the City Council for your support of the Elmhurst Historical Museum, because in doing so, you, as we at the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, recognize the importance of this cultural jewel and the benefits it provides to the city and all its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I also have a few prepared comments. I especially would like to thank Mike for stepping into the role of president of the Heritage Foundation after serving 2 terms as vice president. And I also wanted to thank especially Kathy Jordan, who finished up in October 2 terms as president of the Heritage Foundation. That type of leadership doesn't come naturally to an organization. And Kathy and Mike both bring a lot of experience and energy to the role. And I look forward to working with Mike just as I worked with Kathy. Before addressing the 2016 budget proposal, I'd like to look at the museum's strategic plan for just a moment. As you know, it was adopted earlier this year with input from museum staff, from city administration, from elected officials, and also from community members. The plan is a living document. It's a roadmap for the museum into the future, and it serves as a guide for budget preparation on an annual basis. And the strategic plan identified 5 major goal areas, as you may recall. The first is engage in history, and I like to think that that goal is really the fun public part of the museum. It's the exhibits, the programs. It's those things that make the Historical Museum a leading history institution. The second major goal area was community involvement, and this focuses on those types of external relationships that the museum is able to establish and nourish to make Elmhurst a stronger community, not only for residents, but also for the business community and for visitors who share some of the great things that happen here. The third area was stewardship of facilities. And of course, this is a commitment to the idea that people should be able to experience the museum buildings and grounds as safe and comfortable and as accessible environments. The fourth area of our strategic plan was branding, marketing, and communication. This is the establishment of a strong identity for the museum and its services, and it also addresses that idea of the museum promoting other organizations and programs throughout the entire community. So we really have taken on the challenge to promote not only museum programs and events, but promote those types of things that are going on throughout each neighborhood in Elmhurst. And finally, the fifth area was maximization of revenue sources controlled by the museum. And this includes things like the museum gift shop, the program fees, and also other fees and services. Now, the budget book on pages 93 and 94 include a lengthy list of accomplishments from this past year, based in large part on those 5 goal areas of the museum's strategic plan. I'd like to mention several of those achievements that are listed on pages 93 and 94. As Mike mentioned earlier, in February, the museum opened a major new core exhibit about Elmhurst. It was both the product of original scholarship about the history of Elmhurst, as well as a product of that $300,000 Visionary Voices campaign that was conducted by the Heritage Foundation. Also at that time, both the first floor and second floor galleries were renovated and upgraded to include such things as new wall fabric, new carpeting, low voltage track lighting, and new modern signage. As you may recall as well, in March, the Historical Museum partnered with DuPage County Stormwater to conduct public tours of the Elmhurst Quarry Flood Control Facility. The museum had done this a couple times in the past, and it's always proven to be a sellout. Of course, it's great to have the DuPage County Stormwater office partner with us on that. Their engineers, you may know, you may not know, served as tour guides during the tours. And then in May, the museum organized the annual Elmhurst Museum Day celebration in conjunction with Elmhurst Art Museum and Lizadro Museum. This event is really a celebration of International Museum Day and Museum Day celebrations throughout the United States. So that event, for instance, drew 500 people to the Historical Museum, many of them from out of town as well. In June, the museum partnered with Elmhurst Art Museum to conduct 2 architectural walking tours to showcase some of the residential architecture that surrounds the city center district here in Elmhurst. And in June, the museum established longer public hours on Saturdays, opening at 10 a.m. instead of 1 p.m. In September, we established a fee structure for non-school groups at the Historical Museum. Previously, there was no charge for group tours at the museum. One of those efforts to maximize revenue opportunities included the establishment of this group tour fee that we now have. And then, as Mike mentioned, in September, we also partnered with the Heritage Foundation and Rotary Club to conduct the Elmhurst Craft Beer Fest. We all look forward to the second one coming up next year. In September as well, we worked with Conrad Fisher Elementary School to present the Churchville Schoolhouse Open House at the historic site on Church Road that we operate. And throughout the year, there was continued work on digitizing the museum collection. We've reached over 1,100 images that are now available online to the public for research purposes. We're also partnering with a professor at Elmhurst College for a class project that's part of a larger museum initiative to rebrand the entire museum. And we've teamed with Elmhurst Public Library over the past year to sponsor several family and adult programs. We've seen an increase in museum store sales and program fees and donations at the door over 2014. We'd like to work in 2016 to see that grow even more. And we've raised the customer service bar at the Historical Museum by conducting formal customer service training and feedback for volunteers in order to deliver better messages about the museum and about other services throughout town. Similarly, we established marketing and promotional partnerships with City Center, with Elmhurst Park District, with the Chamber, and with such businesses as Classic Cinemas, Pints, and other businesses throughout the Elmhurst community. Mike mentioned some awards that were presented to the Historical Museum this year. These include Midsize Institution of the Year Award from the Illinois Association of Museums, as well as an Award of Excellence for the By All Accounts exhibit. And similarly, the By All Accounts exhibit earned an Honorable Mention Award from the American Alliance of Museums for our tabletop component. So that type of recognition by our colleagues, not only in the area, but throughout the entire state and then nationally, is great not only for the museum, but it brings recognition to the Elmhurst community as well. We're nearing a completion of an inventory of the museum collections that will be completed very shortly. We also completed a major project to install improved HVAC systems at the Historical Museum in the Gloss Mansion. With that in mind, I'd like to move on to the 2016 budget proposal, which is on page 173 of your budget book. I'll touch on several highlights. First on salaries and wages. Account 1001 is for full-time wages. That provides for the current level of 3 full-time staff members at the Historical Museum. That's my position. It's curator of collections as well as curator of exhibits. And then account 1002 provides for part-time wages. That provides for 6 part-time employees at the museum, including operations of museum galleries from 10 to 5 on Saturday and 1 to 5 on Sunday. Account 3012, consultant fees, provides for services of a historian this year, or in 2016, I should say, to research and write materials for the By All Accounts exhibit. This will include things such as gallery guides, a phone app, and other gallery display features. As you may recall, our vision for the By All Accounts exhibit has been for it to be an ever-changing exhibit. Portions of that exhibit will be changed out over time, and it is a year old. So we're planning for some improvements as well as changes that will take place in that exhibit. 50% of the $8,000 that's identified for the historian services will be matched by the grant from the Heritage Foundation. So $4,000 is provided in the city side of the grant, and $4,000 would come to the city as a match through the Heritage Foundation. Account 3052, professional services. This year provides for a one-time expense of $15,000 for the museum rebranding initiative. This project includes development of a brand new logo, new design standards and templates for print and digital materials, and renaming of the museum. So I look forward to sharing with all of you at the beginning of 2016 a newly renamed Elmhurst Historical Museum, as well as some of those new branding materials. And then 5001, the building repair and maintenance account, provides for preservation of the Gloss Mansion, including necessary exterior repairs at this time, cleaning and tuck pointing. It also provides for repair and upgrade of public spaces in the education center in order to provide for a comfortable and safe setting for public programs that take place. That will include wall coverings, lighting, restroom improvements, and new carpeting in that facility. Our goals for 2016 are provided for by the budget proposal that you have in front of you, and also for the further implementation of the strategic plan. In addition to some of those items I mentioned with itemized accounts, I did want to share that we have 3 exhibits planned for next year. In March, we'll be opening a traveling exhibit through the Smithsonian Institution. It's called Patios, Pools, and the Invention of the American Backyard. We're actually partnering with Elmhurst Art Museum, so we'll be doing a partner exhibits at that time. That's the first time we're able to partner with the Art Museum, and we're looking forward to growing that type of partnership. The second exhibit that will open will be our summer exhibit. It's called But Wait, There's More. That's an exhibit about Ron Popeil, the inventor and marketing personality identified with the Ronco Company and with products like Vegematic and the Pocket Fisherman. That's a Chicago story, and we'll be sharing that type of pop culture exhibit next summer. So I hope you look forward to that. The third exhibit next year takes us down a radically different road. It's called In Her Own Right, Marion Mahoney Griffin. This is an exhibit that we'll produce in-house, and it examines the life and work of Walter Burley Griffin's wife. Now, Marion Mahoney Griffin was an architecture graduate of MIT in 1894, one of the very first graduates, female graduates of an architecture program. And she was the first employee hired by Frank Lloyd Wright. She continued to work in his studio. That's where she met her husband, Walter Burley Griffin. And she and her husband are credited really for spreading the philosophy of the Prairie School to other continents outside the United States. Here it's identified primarily with Frank Lloyd Wright, but if you go to Australia or India, it's Walter Burley Griffin and Marion Mahoney Griffin who are identified as the driving forces behind the Prairie School in those countries. And they moved on to Australia and India, where they established very strong careers. The museum will also complete development of a formal docent program next year in order to grow our school and scout and adult group tours, and will continue to increase revenues at the museum, evaluating in particular the idea of admission fees and other fees for services. We look forward to working closely with the Heritage Foundation to plan and conduct the 2016 Craft Beer Fest. We'll also be working closely with the Heritage Foundation to secure sponsors for museum exhibits, to implement the planned giving program of the Heritage Foundation, and also conduct the regular business of the foundation that includes its ongoing membership program and its annual fund program. And then finally, next year, we'll also complete a master plan for improvements at each of the museum facilities, as well as the museum grounds. So I thank you for your support for museum services in the past year, and want you to know that the staff and the foundation board and volunteers at the Historical Museum look forward to working together to continue to improve the museum and to make it a continued resource for residents here in Elmhurst. So I'll be happy to take any questions or comments concerning the budget or other information.
Great, thank you, Mr. LoCicero, and congratulations on your new position. And Brian, thanks for the update. Any questions or comments for the museum? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Mike and Brian, thank you very much. Brian, you always do a very good job with a very detailed summary, so you eliminated about half of my questions right off the bat, so that's a good thing. Just a few questions, and I pretty much, I think, hit on the one question about staffing every single year, because that's where I've had some concerns of, in the past, it approaching the $500,000 mark in regards to just the wages and sick payout items, which is, on page 173, 1001, 1002, 1006. What I see before me is, and you already touched on this, but for full-time, I see a 5% increase from last budget cycle, and I'm saying proposed budget number 1, because there's a unique situation here for the Historical Museum on the budget line items. So a 5% from that to what you're proposing for 2016, and then I believe from a part-time perspective, about close to a 9% increase. First question on part-time, is the increase due to the fact of obviously merit increases, but because of the expanded hours that you mentioned, or is it an increase in personnel as well? I know you said 6 part-time staff. I don't recall what last year was. Can you speak to that first, please?
The additional on the part-time has to do with additional Saturday hours in order to operate the museum. And also, we had a position, a part-time position open for about 2.5 months this year. So that's not showing up in the estimate. And this year as well, next year as well, we will have the identical number of part-time employees as we do this year.
Okay. And then from a full-time perspective, that's just the 5% is a merit increase. Is my calculations correct, 5%?
I believe it's an estimate that's prorated from a pool, but perhaps Finance Director Gaston could address that question.
Okay. She gets the good mic.
Just keep passing it down.
I mean, we'll have to verify the 5%, but I think it's just based on the estimated cost of going through the salary study last year. That salaries, were reviewed, and then the general increase with a merit assignment to it.
Okay,
So
thank
there's
you.
no change in the number of staff. Brian's correct. It's still 3 full-time employees.
Okay, yeah, I would find it hard to believe at a 5% increase, you'd be able to add a full-time staff for that. The last question I have is on page 94, your expectations, and you don't have to turn to it necessarily, but in regards to filming, and I've touched on this in previous budget discussions in more of a general tense and context, as well as overall Elmhurst and what we video and how many views and really what is it doing for us. So the one expectation of 2016 that's mentioned is, filming for Elmhurst Time Travelers programs with Comcast. I know this is probably small dollars in the grand scheme of things, but overall, I just don't see from what I've seen of number of hits, specifically in your case for Elmhurst Time Travelers, that this being much of a benefit. Can you speak to why you feel this is something that should continue? Because at least from the quick look that I saw, out of 44,000 residents that we have, there was 37 views on one, 28 views, and 49 views. So do you think this is something that the Historical Museum should continue with? What is the benefit of it, and what's the draw of it?
Well, I'd certainly like to see those numbers grow. I think it's a great opportunity to promote the Historical Museum and to promote the schoolhouse. Some of you may not know that the Time Traveler program is filmed at the schoolhouse, and there is a pitch at the beginning of the show for the schoolhouse as a resource here in Elmhurst and for the programs that the museum does. The program is also an opportunity to grow other aspects of museum operations and Heritage Foundation operations. I know there have been instances where guests on the show have become much more aligned as donors with the Heritage Foundation. It's also a way that we're able to share some of the resources that we have at the Historical Museum. For instance, this Thursday we'll be filming the next installment of the Time Traveler program, and I'll be a guest along with Melita Cutright. Melita is a historian and author. She's written a book about the history of Elmhurst College. And she's written other things on local history. We'll be talking about the Elmhurst period following the Chicago fire and the creation of Elmhurst College here. And we'll be sharing a lot of photographs from the collection of the Historical Museum. So I see it as something that I'd like to grow. There's not a direct cost to the Historical Museum for that. It's something that we work through the Comcast office on.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. In committee tonight, we actually had an update from Director Berghager and some of the other museum staff. So some of the questions I think I know the answer to, but for the council's edification, can you go over the revenue budget line for this year and then where you're at this year and then compare it to last year? And then, more specifically, what actions are you taking to correct that line item?
Sure. Earlier in the Public Affairs and Safety Committee, we reviewed several revenue accounts, including...
Can we just state the page number, please? If you're looking at a specific page line?
I'm looking at a schedule that was in the
Okay.
packet.
Okay.
Page 2 of the packet?
If I could, that was one of the committee attachments for tonight, and it was also attached to the
It's on
agenda
board
for
docs.
for
It's
this
on board
evening.
docs for this meeting as well.
Right.
Okay.
Page 2, right, Chris?
Those accounts include museum donations, museum merchandise, and museum program fees. The first, museum donations, is a donation box that's at the Historical Museum. It's a free will donation. This year, we had budgeted $2,500 as income. Our estimate for year end is $1,500. Museum merchandise is the museum store. We had budgeted $5,000 for the year, and we're estimating at year end to come in at $3,400. Museum program fees, the budget for 2015 had shown $3,000, and we're expecting to come in at $2,000. So we are under budget on those revenue figures. We discussed that in the Public Affairs and Safety Committee meeting, as well as steps that have been taken this past year to increase those figures and other sources of revenue. For the new year, there are several areas that we'll be looking at. One is to potentially partner with a class at Elmhurst College to look at the museum gift shop in terms of its operation, its product mix, its promotion and marketing, as well as presentation in the museum shop itself. We'll also be looking at donations that in the past have been directed to the Heritage Foundation. The example that was identified in the Public Affairs and Safety Committee had to do with a local business that was invited to a larger museum event this past summer. The business was invited to showcase some of the products that are carried at the business. And the business made a donation offer. The donation was directed to the Heritage Foundation, although this was a museum-sponsored event. So the question arose from a policy point of view, should that type of donation go to the city account as a museum donation? And we'll also be looking at in-kind services that are provided for the Elmhurst operation of Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. The example that we looked at in the committee had to do with the Beer Fest. As Mike mentioned, more than 60 volunteers participated in that event, but particularly Public Works Division helped secure some tables from other non-museum facilities, some chairs, and helped with some other logistics. And the question arose, what is the dollar cost of those types of services? And from a policy point of view, is it a benefit to recoup those types of costs from the Heritage Foundation? We'll also be looking at other fees for service, for instance, research fees in the coming year, increasing some fees for public programs. Another item that was identified in our strategic plan was to look at the idea of building rental options to rent the museum facility. and decisions on those things will be made in the coming year. We'll come back to the Public Affairs and Safety Committee with recommendations on those.
Okay. Additional comments or questions? Alderman Wagner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Brian, just, or it might be more for Mike. You mentioned the schoolhouse and, the utilization of it. Do you have any numbers around that? How many kids came through? How many times a week they come through? Once a week? Once a month?
I don't have numbers. I can get the specific numbers for you. By and large, the great majority of those classes are from Elmhurst. We do have classes from outside of Elmhurst and from in Chicago. The majority of those are April, May, and June, the prime months for field trips. One of the things we're looking at is to grow the use of the schoolhouse during the rest of the year through some public programs, through group tours. We've had some success with a senior center or retirement centers, having groups come to, for instance, the house to utilize that in some of those months when we don't have a high demand by schools. Other things I'd like to do next year is to partner to do a day camp. We did a day camp a number of years ago, but there's an opportunity there to, I think, utilize the schoolhouse over the summer months in a partnership with another organization.
So could we get the specifics maybe to the council?
Yes, I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would request that the revenue portion of the budget only be a circle-back item.
Okay.
I am very pleased, certainly pleased that the museum has a strategic plan, created a strategic plan and is implementing the strategic plan. I'm very pleased with, and the Beer Festival is a great example of the museum working with other Elmhurst organizations to create an event that drew a lot of interest into Elmhurst and partner with the business community. I'm very pleased by that. But I still have some questions remaining about revenue generation and some of it's in accounting, as Director Berghager mentioned, but then also just some questions that arose from tonight's committee meeting. So I'm asking for a little additional time so that we can answer those questions or address those questions before we pass the budget.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I do want to thank everyone in the foundation and the Historical Museum for all their hard work, and keep up the good work. Thank you very much for all the information.
Thank you.
We will now move to Public Works, so give us a moment to switch just a little bit in the staffing here. I'll ask Howard to come on up.
Okay.
Okay.
Get the pit crew in there.
Bless you. Test, test. Is that any better?
A lot better.
Not as good as the hand mic.
Everybody left.
Yeah, it's good. The audience is shrinking. Jim.
Yeah, there's nobody to hear you. You're making a lot of sound, but nobody can hear it.
Ready to go?
Ready? Ready? Still working?
If we have issues, I'll ask you to use that microphone.
Okay.
All right, Howard, all you.
Thank you. We'll kind of go over, we'll just do I think the general fund, we'll go and put that as a stopping point for the first part tonight. One of the things we're looking.
Yeah, that mic's just, it's not working. I mean,
It's just not picking it up.
So we'll go ahead and start with the general fund. A lot of our programs this year in Public Works are actually a continuation. We don't have a lot of new programs or projects. I should say new types of policies. We have a lot of projects going forward, but they're really continue to focus on our stormwater improvements and our consent order improvements when we get to the MUF portion of the thing. When you look at our stormwater, we're spending in this budget over the next several years, projecting about $37 million, both on public projects and storm sewer repairs and the different policies and programs we're offering residents. In the admin and engineering, again, stormwater projects will continue to be our major focus. We currently have Webster and the quarry project, the Tree Streets, out approved, and the other one is out to bid currently with bids opening in several weeks. But we also have Madison, Harrison, York Commons, and Golden Meadows under design at various phases, along with I-290 in York. So those continue to take up a good portion of our effort. Next year, you also see we'll be completing the First Street resurfacing project. That was a street program which was held over from this year due to the quarry project taking place there. You'll notice in Public Works, we do have a lot of our maintenance costs are up in our programs. We're showing about 20%, 15 to 20%. A lot of that is basically due to our increase in material costs. So we're trying to hold what we're doing the same amount of patching, same amount of crack filling, alley maintenance, those items, but our costs are going up about 15 to 20% just for the increase of the material. One new item we have in the Public Works street end is that we're looking to start a 4-year program. This will be the first year of it, spending $225,000 a year, and that's going to be cleaning inlets. We've been focusing lately on cleaning a lot of our large storm sewers throughout the city, but what we're finding is a lot of it is just the initial from the inlet into the sewer itself. So we're proposing to start a new program for that, and that'll virtually every inlet in the city then over a 4-year period would be cleaned, and we'll start a rotation. In our roadway construction, we are up about $840,000. Part of it is due to some of the STP projects we have going on. Again, we have First Avenue from Willow to West. We also will be working on Phase 2 engineering of our South York project, which is Van Buren to Lexington. And then we also have money in this year and next year's budget to begin and then finalize up the Palmer Underpass improvements. If you've noticed, a lot of those walls on the west side by the police station, by the library, are kind of sloughing down and failing. And we currently are working on a design to redo those walls, redo the landscaping and the improvements of the sidewalks and the stairs up to to First Avenue. Our snow and ice removal, pretty much the fund stays the same. There's no major changes we're looking at in that program. We will be starting and finishing up our salt dome and our Public Works Phase 1 yard improvements, which will be going on. In our forestry department, we continue with our the tree removal, our disease removal. One thing we'd like to point out is that our EAB removal, the emerald ash borer, since we started that program, we've removed about 65% of the ash trees that we have that are our responsibility, but we still have 818 of those remaining, which we believe we can remove in the next 2 to 3 years. One major item under contractual services in forestry is that we're showing an approximate up about $72,000. What we're looking at is these projects, all of our mowing, all of our general routine contracts have not been bid in the last 3 to 4 years. So going back out to bid, we expect to see an increase in our cost there. In our electrical department, the electrical fund, one of the main items that we've actually applied for ICC funding for is railroad interconnects, both at Addison and the railroad, and then over by York High School and the railroad. For St. Charles Road is, we were shown a few years back to have a deficiency with the interconnect of the traffic signals to time them better with the railroad crossings. So we have applied. We're waiting to hear back from funding on there. In our building maintenance, again, we will see, we expect to see an increase of about $30,000 because we are going out for a new bid on our contractual custodial maintenance. So we're expecting that again every 3 years we go out to bid, and we're expecting to see that have an increase. In our fleet maintenance, one of the increases you'll see in the budget is we are projecting just our parts alone going up about $40,000. And that is because over the years we've been increasing the amount of time some of the vehicles have been in the fleet, so we're expecting parts to go up that amount. We're also going to be looking to buy a portable fuel tank. With all the generators we have throughout the city at all of our facilities now, this will allow us to actually fuel them up on our own, that we'll be able to fill up the fuel at Public Works and with a small tank take it out to each of the sites. In the public benefit portion of the budget, we have $50,000 proposed to study the metro station for improvements. Staff feels that that's a facility that is a focal to our downtown, that we need to have a major look at what we can do with that building. So we're looking to study at least a phase next year with construction of any improvements in the years after that. We also have, in the public benefit, we have engineering dollars to, it's been on the books for a while though, but it's to work on the York underpass down at the Prairie Path. So there are dollars to start that engineering process at that location. And then on a smaller project for public benefit, we are looking at the St. Charles Cottage Hill intersection, upgrading the pedestrian crossing signals to a more updated, kind of more of the system we have down at the Prairie Path crossing that can be activated 24 hours a day, not just with a crossing guard. When we move on to our the MUF, again, the big focus of those departments again is going to be our continued work on the Southwest wet weather control facility. The tank is being worked on right now. The Jackson lift station is being worked on. Those will both be completed next year. A lot of our focus is the continuing study. They are starting to go house to house and do the inspections with our consultant. And then we'll be following up that we have to start doing the improvements the following year. So that'll continue to be a major focus. Next year, we are proposing 2 tanks to be painted in the city, both the St. Charles and Route 83 and then our north side tank, with the south side tank being painted in 2017. We'll be working on continued work on our aeration system and the blower system down at the treatment plant. We have $650,000 for the effluent sampling station at the plant. One project that we have out to bid right now, which will be ongoing in the early part of the year, is our Park Avenue lift station replacement. And then we have 2 projects that's a little over $3.3 million, both the south digester roof and a mixing project, and then our grit removal system replacement. So we continue to have major expenditures down at the wastewater plant to keep that running. In our distribution and collection system, we continue with our sewer lining, our leak detection, our storm sewer cleaning and televising programs. One major item that we'll be bringing forth with the finance department is we are looking at a 2-year change out of all of our water meters in the city. Originally, this was proposed as a 5-year program, but we're looking to accelerate that to a 2-year program so we can recoup what we think are some water losses or revenue losses in that program. So we'll be bringing that forward. We do have continued our smoke and the dye water testing for the consent order. We will continue with our large diameter stormwater cleaning. And then one item we're doing is we're increasing our overhead sewer program. And again, that's a program for our residents. We're increasing that from the $75,000 budget up to $275,000. And that's more in line with what we've been spending over the last several years for both the overhead sewer and the other programs that we do offer the residents. As far as our water main replacement program, we are looking, as we've talked about in the past with the Baxter and Woodman study, we are looking at 700 additional feet to be included in that. And one item, in addition, we are looking to replace the water main along Garden, which we've had several breaks this past year. In our parking lot fund, the good news, I guess, for parkers is we are not going to be taking a deck out of service for any major structural work or a rehab. It's kind of our off year. We will be studying the next deck to be worked on, but we will be painting the Schiller deck. And then we also have money to start looking at parking lot repairs over on the Michigan lot. When you look at the motor fuel tax, we are showing, we went with the county this year for our salt purchases. There was a lot of issues over the last couple of years with the state program, towns not getting salt or not getting the same price as some of their neighbors. And what that resulted in is a price of about $10 per ton higher However, we are guaranteed a greater amount of salt, so we're happy to be going with DuPage County on that. And again, if you look at our stormwater focus, we're out to bid on the 2 projects. We have several projects under design. Buyouts, again, we are proposing another $1 million for buyouts next year. And one of the things that the Public Works and Building Committee is working on currently is our flood-proofing policies. We do have some homes that we won't be able to address with any of our major projects, so they are looking at some different options for flood-proofing. We heard one presentation tonight, and we're still kind of bouncing around with which way we want to go with flood-proofing and to what level that we cost share and offer that up to residents. As far as stormwater, let me find my notes here. One of the items we have going on is that with the admin assistant position, we're moving a lot of our stormwater programs onto that position currently. As many of you know, our stormwater website, we've been developing, and she's been our lead on that. We are less than a month away from going live on that program, so we're looking right now at the first week in December to be moving forward on the stormwater website. And again, it's strictly dedicated to all of our stormwater and our consent order projects. That is going to take up a lot of time because in looking at it as the projects get moving forward, we're going to be looking at daily and weekly updates. So residents will be able to go to the stormwater website, click on a project, and get the latest activity of what's going on with their project. It also has an interactive map in one corner, so you can kind of click on an area of the city, it'll be tagged. It's like a Google map, and you'll be able to click to that, and it'll lead you right to the project that's benefiting that area. Some of the other items you'll see going on with our stormwater that with the admin assistant is just a coordination of all of our programs, kind of our go-to person in Public Works. Right now, someone will call and they might get myself, they might get Kent, they might get a few of the other engineers. But what we're going to be doing is focusing all of our flooding and all of our stormwater questions to the admin assistant, and then that person will then farm out the questions and do the follow-ups. It'll also be handling our buyout program, which she did a lot of significant work this year on it. We'll be looking at a few other items. One of the things that it does do is that it'll free up myself, Kent, and some of the other engineers' times to actually go out and investigate a little bit more of these, the flooding problems when we have those issues. And in one program that we are going to look to do that we have not done here at the city, it's to become CRS rated. So it's the community rating system. It's actually a national program based on, it's an ISO, the Insurance Service Organization type rating. We're based on what we do as a city and different policies we have and different programs. We would actually be given a class, either a class 1, which is the best class, up to a class 10. And a lot of the work the county does actually benefits the city. But what that ultimately does is people who apply for flood insurance would actually get reduced rates on different programs based on the efforts that we're putting forward. So that's kind of the overall Public Works budget in a quick nutshell. So we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Killian? Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned that right now the Public Works Committee is talking about floodproofing
Artie, can you pull your mic a little closer?
in the CNT program. Are there placeholders in the budget for either of those programs now?
We don't have anything in the budget for either of those programs specifically for that. I think when we look at some of our projects, if the committee were to move forward, again, when we look at it where we have $10, $15 million, through a variety of stormwater projects and policies, some of the overhead programs, something like the CNT, we may be able to absorb that into that program. And I think it just depends on how in depth we get with what we're offering up.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Toledo.
Thank you. I also have a raspy voice, so I apologize for that. Thank you, Howard, for putting this together. The nature of the budget discussion is that we tend to not talk about all the great things that you're doing and your department's doing, but tend to look at, all of the things that we're spending money on. My first question, I have 2 questions. My first question is related to the metro station. It's my understanding that that is technically the responsibility of Union Pacific for improvements. Is that correct or not correct? Or are we assuming that they're just never going to do anything and we're just, stepping up to the plate?
Any improvements that are made to the station will need to be approved by the railroad, but ultimately the cost is on the city to do that.
Okay. So I support that. I think that's a great idea, and it's well thought out in terms of the impact that could have on our downtown, so thank you. The second question I had was related to a couple of different areas where there are vehicles and vehicle replacement costs. I could point to, for those looking, 157, page 157, itemizes out some of the changes where there's an excess compared to the prior year. Also in the forestry division, I think that's on 162. And then also in the parking system fund, page around 259. We got a total in 2016 of 8 vehicles to the tune of an increase in a budget of around, sorry, I didn't do all of my math before this, 3, 4, about 500,000 in 2016, 12 vehicles in 2017, upwards of projected of over $1 million. Have we delayed for so long replacement of these vehicles? It seems like such a big increase compared to prior years, that they are in such disrepair that this is our only option, or is there an option to spread that out over more than just what seems like a big hit in 2 years?
If, Alderman, if you want to refer to the KEB pages in the back, hopefully you have the KEB in there. You may or may not, but there's a detailed vehicle replacement schedule starting with page 100 of the KEB. And the reason I point that out is to show the council how we try to spread them all out over a number of years so that they aren't piling up. And occasionally, and certainly Howard can address this, we do have some of the more expensive vehicles that come up from time to time, which makes it look a little distorted from other years.
Okay. So this is just, what you're saying is, I know we're always replacing vehicles. We see them come through consent agendas, but it certainly is jumping out on the, whatever those reports are, where you have line items or material change year over year. So this just happens to be that we're kind of getting hit with a bunch of expensive vehicles.
Right. We had, going back, I believe, 4 or 5 years, Corey, if I'm correct, we did, at that time when we had budget issues, started to postpone the replacements. So now we're getting to a point where a lot of those are coming due that we're well beyond the replacement levels. And looking at the list, some of these vehicles, we're probably at 13 to probably 16 years old as an average on some of our larger plow trucks. One of the other things that's raising the prices is that a lot of the EPA regulations on the type of engines that are on these are actually greatly increased costs, adding 5, 10, 15,000 just for the engine itself. So we're seeing a lot of costs go up there, but we do have, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dump trucks with plows. We have an aerial truck, so they are a lot of our larger vehicles that we're looking to replace this coming year.
And I'm not saying this is for certain, but would it be possible to swap out some, just so that we're not hit with multiple more expensive vehicles in the same year, just to even it out? Or are all of them at their kind of on their last leg?
That's been evaluated, and I think that's where, if you look at the overall plan, you'll see that we try to equal it out long-term. Let me see if we have a total on there.
And if I can add, while Howard's looking that up, we try to balance it with all the other departments as well, police and fire and whatever equipment they need. I will point out, though, since I did point out the schedule, on page 102, there was an item on there that's been deferred. And a lot of the times the city council doesn't hear what we've maybe deferred to bring the budget into balance. But Howard and his team wanted to look into the idea of a snow melter, rather than trucking snow out of the downtown and Spring Road area, to maybe look at bringing something like that in. Rather than purchase it in 2016, we're going to defer that and take a look at it, see if we can maybe lease one for a year or rent one to see how that works to offset the cost of the trucks that come in and out. We think that might work better, but we want to see the results of that before we go out and buy one.
So, as a follow-up, I apologize, will that reduce your 1.6 total vehicle replacement amount in 2016 by 390,000?
Yeah, yes.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mayor. So I've got a couple questions specific to stormwater management, and I think, obviously the budget reflects a high priority on stormwater management. We all know it's the highest priority of the city right now. There were some conversations about adding to staff a manager, maybe even a director level position specific to stormwater. That didn't happen in the budget. Can you talk to why or what the rationale was for not adding a position at that level specific for stormwater?
I'll certainly address that. It's a conversation that we did have. What Howard said about getting the engineers into the field more to help the residents, or perhaps help them from their office, whether it's on the phone or via email, whatever, is how we looked at prioritizing that. And so we looked at, rather than adding a staff member, a full-time staff member, how can we peel off some of the responsibilities of the programs that we have? And so the idea of making the administrative assistant full-time and letting her do some of the administrative functions to get the engineers into the field and helping residents seemed like the best way to utilize those resources. I think we'd like to do it that way, at least for a year, to see how that's working, see how much more time the engineers get into the field. And if the council likes, we can address it in the next budget after that.
So I certainly appreciate and respect the fiscal conservatism, of course. But I remain concerned that yes, engaging with the residents when they have when they have a concern, a question, some of the question concerns are very legitimate. Some of them are based on I've got a new home going up next to me, so I'm going to flood, and most of us know that that's not the case. But the bigger question, or the bigger concern I have, is that we become a little more proactive. So it's not just getting the engineers into the field after we get a phone call from a resident. It's getting engineers into the field, or somebody that's dedicated to stormwater, to find the next good home to buy, instead of waiting for it to go into foreclosure. That's able to keep the website up to date once it's up and running, because I believe, I don't believe, I know, and we all know that Howard's got a full-time job, and Kent has got a full-time job and a half, when it comes to some of these things. And I think in the course of 24 hours, about a month ago, I had to contact Kent for some traffic stuff and some flood stuff. So I think that these folks have full-time jobs, and just adding the stormwater on top of that stretches them thin in other areas. So I don't know that I'm willing to come out right out and say we should have a stormwater manager, but I think it's something that we certainly could have, and that if we had that person, he or she would be very busy right away, and we could change our mission a little bit in terms of what we're doing now to becoming a little more proactive in how we approach some of these projects. And I think of something like the program we just put into place about 6 months ago. If you add stormwater detention, we'll cover a portion of it. How well is that program advertised? If we had somebody that was a manager of stormwater, that person could be advocating that program, or more importantly, when we had an application for somebody who wanted to do something, this person could manage that the whole way through, instead of it bouncing around to a couple different people. So I'm a little disappointed that the position wasn't added. I understand why it wasn't added, and I'm certainly willing to play along, but I will continue to challenge staff, and I know others will too, that given where we're at with stormwater in this town and the urgency of which the residents expect us to be doing things, It's certainly a position that, if it were in the budget this year, I think a lot of us would have shook our head and said, it makes some sense. So I realize it's a long-winded statement, and there's probably not a question in there. I guess it's more just expressing disappointment that that's something we didn't see added to the budget.
Okay, Alderman Bram.
First, I just want to ask a question on procedure. Typically, we walk through the line items in Public Works because it's a big piece and parcel of the budget. Are we just asking questions, anything to do with Public Works, or are we walking through these line items?
I think we're doing a little bit of both, Alderman Bram.
Okay.
But if you want to start with streets and bridges, you know, page 152 and go on down, that's fine.
Okay. On page 152, streets and bridges, just a question in regards to personnel. You already made mention of the administration assistant becoming full-time, the public works inspector. It was in the summary as well as in our book here. I see a 16% roughly increase on 1001 for full-time. Does that cover the inspector, the assistant, both, part of each? How does that break out? Both? I see Tom saying both. Well, just a general statement in regards to the new program of cleaning inlets. I think it's a great thing. Hopefully, we could even accelerate that in the future. And I think you mentioned every 4 years?
A 4-year program.
Every 4 years. I think especially the first round, the quicker we can get through all of City of Elmhurst, the better. 4 years just seems to be a long time frame to at least get the first round and then maintenance after that. So if we can accelerate that, I think it's a good idea. I concur with Alderman Toledo in regards to vehicles and when we purchase and how long we can stretch it before it becomes not beneficial from a fiscal standpoint. On page 155, line item 3084, storm sewer cleaning. The budget is, oh, I said why lower. The budget is from 750 to 850. What is that covering exactly? I see an increase, which is a good thing. Are we still talking about large diameter sewers? Is that in the J form somewhere? No. Are we talking about large diameter sewers, or what are we talking about in that instance? I'm not complaining that it's increasing. I think it's a good thing. What's that? Oh, it's reducing, sorry. My comment was correct. Why is it reducing significantly? Thank you.
We think we're close to finishing the large diameter cleaning. We were able to accelerate that program, so that's dropping off, that portion of it.
So the remaining 350 is to wrap up the large diameter, and we're not seeing a need to go any smaller diameter storm sewers than we've already covered?
No, those are the ones we do contractually, and then we are also looking to do 100,000 to actually start evaluating what we've been televising to start our repair program in that.
Okay.
And then we're looking at the following year going up another 500, thinking that we'll be doing a bigger program itself on storm sewers.
Okay, thank you. I kind of went past my first line item, so I will stop.
Oh, go ahead, if you have more, Alderman Bram.
On page 156, the mobile equipment, I think you spoke to it in your summary, or maybe it was in the memo. Line item 8007, mobile equipment. This is for snow removal, I believe, correct?
No, that is actually the sweeper. The explanation on page 158 is off. That trackless was actually purchased this year, so that the 220,000 is for a replacement street sweeper.
Oh, this is for a street sweeper.
Yes.
Didn't we just buy a street sweeper? No?
We replaced one of them. This is the second one.
Wasn't the second one meant for just backup purposes only? Or are we going to be doing more overall citywide street sweeping?
Well,
we'll still have our contractual street sweeping program, the second sweeper. Now with the storm preparing that we do prior to predicted events, we send out both sweepers. So the one that we're replacing or we're proposing to replace is a 1997 sweeper. So it's old, it's had some major repairs in the last few years.
Okay. It was my understanding that the second one was just meant for a backup, and we were utilizing the one we just bought in regards to the storm readiness, if you would, I guess.
Alderman Brand, you have more?
I guess the other main thing that I would like to ask about, I don't know where it is in regards to a line item, but in regards to the KEB on page 44, the York Underpass. I know we've had discussions in the Public Works and Building Committee in regards to this. The last that was stated was that we were going to follow up to see if the intersection itself could be changed. I guess the path to get across York at that location. So I'm kind of curious on why, again, we're seeing dollar amounts for a York underpass when the committee agreed to move forward with talking with the Park District, et cetera, to change the intersection.
Alderman, that's correct, that the last direction that we discussed was having a conversation with the Park District on realignment of the path. We've not had that conversation because we've been having other conversations regarding stormwater, and so it was, the idea was let's get through the stormwater discussions first, and then we can talk about the Prairie Path. This remains in here because we still have grant dollars waiting for us at the DuPage Mayor and Managers Conference. And so until we have this conversation and know which direction exactly we're going, we decided just to leave this in the budget as is.
I'd like to request that this become a circle back item, please.
Okay.
And then the last question I have is, again, with the KEB on page 36 and 28 in the KEB, one of which is the alley rehab, and the other is the permeable alley demonstration. Is there any way that we could redirect some of those dollars for the alley rehab to move up a permeable alley demonstration? I think it fits in our mission as a city to pretty much walk the talk when it comes to stormwater management. And if we could shift the priority and get a permeable alley, that would help in regards to stormwater management and walking the talk of the city doing its part of managing stormwater as much as possible.
We have that programmed out in 2018 in the anticipation we're going to apply for a grant for that. And so we didn't want to anticipate that the grant would come through in the next 2 years. By the time we get to it and hopefully are awarded that grant, we would have the time to install that. So that was purely grant funded.
Well, I thought it was grant and capital improvement funded. No?
Well, it's in the capital improvement, that's correct, but the funding is still, the idea is that it would be grant funded. I think we put in there a minimum of 75% grant funded.
Okay, so you're pretty much summarizing saying that it is not possible if we want grant dollars to maybe move it up into the upcoming fiscal year to at least do the engineering portion of it, and then grant dollars for the implementation?
If the council sees fit, certainly we can do the engineering this year, but I don't anticipate that we would get grant dollars for the next fiscal year, no.
We just mark this as a circle back?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Alderman York.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. On page 155, line item 3055, is that the overhead sewer?
That line item is for the new program we have that provides up to $5,000 for people installing dry wells, rain gardens, et cetera.
Which line item is the overhead sewer? I think Howard mentioned it during his...
That is on page 244. And on that particular page, it's line item 3089.
244?
Correct.
What line item, Ken? I'm sorry.
3089.
Thank you. Okay. Because I couldn't find it, and I couldn't figure out how much we're doing. On page 164, I just have one, this is my last question. Page 164, line item 8016 on capital outlay traffic signals. So I guess my thought was just, why isn't this a railroad responsibility? They're putting railroad tracks through the middle of our streets. Why don't they do this? Why don't they pay for this?
I think the railroad looks at it as you're putting a street through the middle of our railroad track.
Got that wrong. Let's set them straight.
We are going to them to get some of the funding for that. No guarantee, but I think generally safety is an issue for them, an important issue for them, so they are usually pretty good about helping with these kind of projects.
And what level of success have we seen in the past in this type of stuff?
With this project, it was actually identified by the ICC that these two intersections were deficiencies. So we think we have a good opportunity for the funding because it's an ICC grant program. So we pretty much said, you know, you told us here's a deficiency, well, now give us money to correct that. So we did apply for it last year and did not get it. So they had a new program again out we're waiting to hear back from.
And you said it's ICC, Illinois?
Right, the ICC program.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Howard? Danny, sorry, Alderman Plumsky. It's a time check, 10:30, folks.
Thank you. Question on the Metra potential improvements. Will that take into consideration the evaluation and recommendations from the Active Transit Alliance that looked at the Metra?
When we hire a consultant, we will look at that because a lot of it has to do with the pedestrian access, the parking, where the bike racks are. We're going to be looking at all that as part of the study to kind of how do we improve that whole area.
I'm ready.
I would add a question to that. I know we're looking at it. Is there other funding mechanisms? It seems like every once in a while you go to a metro station that's, I don't know, call it blown out, if you will, but I can't imagine that that's all paid for by municipal dollars. Are there federal dollars? Is that part of the $50,000 study, where to go get the money to spruce it up?
I don't think so, but you're right that some communities are able to get funding from either the railroad or from Metra. We have consistently asked those two if they have any funding, and they've consistently said no. And I think Mike Kopp has worked with the railroads a little bit more than I have, but it seems like newer projects seem to get more funding for whatever reason, and I think it depends on ridership, and we're fairly high in our ridership along the line. So we will continue to press both of them for money, but this is the study to know what would be needed in general, and so we can then go to them and request the funding.
Okay. Alderman Bram?
Thank you. Page 163, Other Services, line item 30-98. It seems like there's a significant...
Sorry, Alderman Bram, what was the line item?
30-98.
Got it.
On page 163.
It's going down from the year before. Reductions is even.
So essentially, the question is why the significant increase from the estimated last year? Not so much the budget, because it's down from the previous budget, but from the estimated.
Right. This year, we're looking at doing engineering for LED streetlights and to replace the direct buried wires in the ground with conduit and new cables. So the $130,000 for 2016 is dollars to replace the direct burial street wire with the new wire and conduit. So
It was my understanding that we upgraded our street lights, or is this street lights you said? Oh, it's street lights. All right, forget it.
Okay, any additional questions for Public Works? 10:30, yes, it is 10:30. Thank you, Alderman York. I think that wraps it for this evening. City Manager, you'll send us another update. Are we planning on having one, let's do some scheduling here for a second.
Monday.
Certainly next week, yes?
Yes.
And potentially the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay,
For the foreseeable future.
for the foreseeable future. I don't know, fifth Monday, you never know. Thanksgiving, holiday, the whole bit. All right, so at least for the next 2 Mondays. Couple of things before I wrap up. Veterans Day is Wednesday, and there will be a ceremony at the mansion at 10:30, is that right?
Correct.
So along with the normal Veterans Day procedures or proceedings that we have, I certainly encourage people to attend. Council may recall that about maybe 8-10 months ago, Kevin Calkins, a Elmhurst resident and Vietnam War veteran, came to City Hall, came to our public forum, and wanted to recognize Vietnam War veterans. This year's being recognized as the 50th year anniversary of the start of the Vietnam War and the 40th anniversary of the end of aggression of the Vietnam War. And I'm happy to say through Mr. Calkins' hard work, American Legion, city staff, Truce Monument, that we actually have completed that project. It's over in Wilder Park right now. That's going to be an add-on to the normal Veterans Day process. So after we're inside in the mansion, then we're going to head outside and rededicate the plaque. So a lot of hard work went into that, and I would encourage people to do that. Also, this Thursday, we do have a stormwater meeting here. Is it 7 or 7:30? Do you know what we're doing?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock here, our ongoing efforts for intergovernmental cooperation with parks and schools. Anyone else before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Alderman Wagner.
Just if you could repeat the timing for Wednesday's ceremony.
10:30 is when it starts at the Wilder Mansion.
Inside the Wilder Mansion?
Inside, and then there's going to be some sort of a process, I think bagpipes or something, actually out to the Vietnam War Memorial at the end of that one. So, all right, any other? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Honquist. All in favor say aye.
Aye.